With a fragmented left and a scandal-ridden right, France's presidential race has an unexpected front-runner. Emmanuel Macron, a 39-year-old investment banker and former finance minister, has emerged from relative obscurity to lead the pack. And a lot of liberals are now hoping he's the man to stop far-right challenger Marine Le Pen in the second round of the presidential election. But with populism on the rise, is Macron's centrist and in many ways neoliberal agenda really what the French voters want? Is he the change candidate or in fact Mr. Continuity? Joining me here in the arena to debate this are Benjamin Haddad, one of Macron's top representatives, and in Paris, Laura Slimani, an advisor to Socialist presidential candidate Benoit Hamon. Thank you both for joining me on UpFront. Benjamin, let me start with you. You joined Emmanuel Macron's En Marche movement early on. You're now one of its representatives. This is a brand new party. Your candidate did serve in a socialist government, now calls himself an independent, but has never actually been elected to office before. What does he actually stand for?
Well, first, I mean, he was never actually a member of any party before that. As you mentioned, he was a civil servant and an investment banker, became an advisor and a minister to Hollande, and he decided to resign. And instead of joining the left-wing primary, or instead of trying to join one of the presidential campaigns, decided to create his own movement from scratch that we call En Marche Forward, which is a completely unique platform that is both socially liberal, economically liberal, moderate. He's also unabashedly pro-European. At a time after Brexit, when you have the rise of populism all over Europe and the United States, he is not shy in defending the European Union and saying that it needs to be reformed, it needs to be transformed. But these are, I think, the key pillars of Emmanuel Macron's message.
But Benjamin, he was a finance minister in François Hollande's government. The former Prime Minister Manuel Valls now endorses him. Before becoming a politician, he was a banker. He's a product of elite schools. What do you say to those who say he is the continuity candidate? He's not the candidate of change.
Well, he is not relying on the traditional party structures. He's not relying on traditional politicians. Indeed, he's endorsed from people from the right to the left, but he's already said that he would not govern with them, that he would govern with fresh faces.
Okay, Laura, he's a reformer and he's not relying on traditional party structures. He's a different type of politician.
Well, I think he's just, a conservative with a new book cover. It's the same book, it's the same solutions. It's the solutions that the right and the left sometimes have tried for the past 30 years, liberalizing the labor market, reducing public spending, harming our public services, not giving any rights. And he doesn't stand for any new rights for workers, for LGBTI, for women. And, just as a reminder, I mean, lots of people from the right from the Conservative Party have joined him because they're very uncomfortable with his own candidate and very comfortable with the platform of Emmanuel Macron, which I don't think is the proof of, or is the testimony of a candidate that stands for change. I think it's the testimony, or it's the proof that this candidate is standing for a conservative policy.
Benjamin, you're backing a conservative.
I'm not backing either a conservative or a socialist. I think these are actually, views of the past. I mean, he is indeed supported by a lot of people who come from the right, by a lot of people who come from the left, because they don't recognize themselves in the way the parties are structured right now. They're extremely polarized. The socialist primary has produced probably the most left-leaning candidate.
Because he doesn't stand for anything.
The Republican primary. Okay, let me finish, please. The Republican primary has produced also a very social conservative and a very right-leaning candidate on economic issues and on liberalization. So he is indeed, he's a moderate. He's very pro-European. He's the only one who's running on a positive and optimistic platform when it comes to Europe.
I mean, I'm sorry. Your candidate is not saying anything about the challenge of automation, for instance, which is something that President Obama, at one of his last speech of his presidency, said was the main challenge for the working class and for working people tomorrow. He doesn't, give any solutions to that. Only saying that he's going to reduce the rights of workers. He's not going to create more jobs by investing in renewable energies. He's going to reduce the amount of jobs in the public services when we need more jobs in order to take care of old people, in order to take care of our education system, in order to invest in future sectors of the economy. Emmanuel Macron doesn't give any way forward. He doesn't stand for anything new. The candidate that does is mine, Benoit Hamon, and I'm sorry to be very partisan there, but he's the only one who put forward new solutions to the current problems, universal basic income, new ways of reducing working time.
Laura, let me ask you a question on your candidate. You say, your candidate offers new solutions. I mean, Emmanuel Macron has said the labels of right and left are outdated. Benjamin says a lot of French voters don't see themselves in socialist or conservative terms. When you look at the next presidential election, when you see that the Republicans and the Socialists, the two traditional mainstream parties of France, probably won't be on the ballot in the second round, Macron has a point, doesn't he?
I am not defending one party or another party. I am defending a candidate that is actually, not only saying he's new and pretending he's new because he thinks being new is a good campaign communication strategy. He's actually standing for new solutions. There is nothing new in what Emmanuel Macron is standing for.
Benjamin, if you look at the election of Trump, if you look at Brexit, a lot of these upsets over the last year, these populist upsets, many would argue have been driven by a backlash against globalization, against stagnant wages, against kind of corporate takeovers of public life. And yet you have a candidate, your candidate Emmanuel Macron, who's arguing for more liberalization, more globalization. Aren't you worried that'll end up producing the same result as we saw in the US and the UK with Trump and Brexit? You'll end up with Marine Le Pen if Emmanuel Macron is the opponent.
No, actually the contrary. I think if Macron wasn't candidate today, we'd have a huge risk of having Marine Le Pen being elected, and I think he's the best barrier against her. The populists are proposing protection, cultural protection, barriers, borders, protectionism, because they know that the new divide is between those who propose closed societies and those who propose open societies. You can't be shy on the other side. You can't say, well, we do a little bit like the populist, and you can't only be a technocrat. I think the thing that Macron is doing, as I said, unabashedly pro-European. He's thinking that globalization could be a chance for France. He's not saying that.
Isn't he by definition a technocrat?
No, I don't think he's a technocrat. No, I think he's exactly opposite of this. I think he started his campaign before even coming out with his technical platform and his concrete policy proposals. He's coming out with a vision for society. He said, an optimistic, forward-looking vision of France that is reconciled with itself, that can use European globalization as an opportunity.
Okay, let Laura respond.
What Mr. Haddad is not saying to you is that Emmanuel Macron wants to suppress massively jobs in the public sector. Now, how is that something valuable and something relevant for the future when you know the challenges we have ahead of us regarding the aging population we have and the lack of personnel to take care of them and the bad way they are being taken care of, when you know the challenges ahead of us in terms of education, because education is the best way to prevent unemployment in the future.
Hold on, isn't what you're describing a failure of the left, in particular a failure of the socialist president? It's not as if France has been ruled by the right for the past 5 years. It's been ruled by the president from your party.
Well, precisely. I mean, but what went wrong with the presidency of François Hollande, and what a lot of people have been saying for a long time when we saw the way things were going, is that we didn't, as the Socialist Party, stand as the force of transformation. We, decided to go with the flow of globalization, to go with the flow of liberalization measures in the labor market. And this is something that Benoit Hamon has always been very critical of. But these methods are exactly what Emmanuel Macron is standing for. He's standing for the same thing, just worse and 10 times more intensively.
Benjamin, how is Emmanuel Macron, if he wins, how's he actually going to govern? Because in France, parliamentary elections are held a month after presidential elections. Obviously, Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen, if they're the two final candidates, as the poll suggests, neither of them are going to have a majority in parliament. How will your candidate actually govern without a majority in parliament?
He's going to run 577 candidates. He might have some people from the Socialist Party, some people from the Republican Party joining him after the presidential election. The vast majority of the candidates will be new. He already committed to having 50% of women, to having a majority of people who come from civil society, a majority of people who have never been elected
to office.
50%
of women
I was in Paris
so he has to.
Yeah, it is the law, but unfortunately it is a law. I completely agree with Laura, but it's a law that a lot of parties have decided not to respect and pay a fine not to respect it. I think she would agree on this.
Your former party, that's true, but the left has respected it.
Yeah, the Republican Party, the Socialist Party for a long time. But anyway, let me just add something, a couple things. First, so he will run candidates, and I think the French will be consistent and give him a majority. And I think they want new faces, they want renewal. He's running on his own vision and his own platform, and I think that's also what's creating this momentum. Is you see the same old recipes, reducing spending on one side, increasing spending. People are fed up with these constant old recipes that we hear at every election.
We're running out of time. Laura, let me ask you this. If it's Emmanuel Macron, as all the polls suggest, who will face Marine Le Pen in the second round, will you put your animosity towards Macron aside and will you be out there with others on the left campaigning for Macron to stop Le Pen? Isn't that the priority?
We always have stood in front, next to the Republican, the Republican as like not the right-wing candidate, but the candidate that respected democratic values against the National Front. So that's not going to change from one day to another, contrary to the way it did change in the Conservative Party. And that actually gave Marine Le Pen and her party the opportunity of getting a lot of town halls and political positions. But what I want to say is that I will fight until the 23rd of April and hopefully until the end of this election for the candidate that is actually standing for progressive policies in this election, Benoit Hamon. It's clearly not Emmanuel Macron. I will stand for clarity because I think the clarity of the alternative we give to Marine Le Pen is the best way to beat her, not only on the short term, but also on the long run.
Laura, Benjamin, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you both for joining me in the arena. That's our show. Up Front will be back next week.